MicroStrategy's $91 billion infinite money glitch is beginning to go global. A company in Asia has stolen Michael Saylor's Bitcoin playbook to buy over 1,700 Bitcoin and has sent its stock soaring 4,800% in the last 12 months. However, this company in Asia is not the only one employing this tactic. There are now hundreds of companies buying Bitcoin for their corporate treasuries all around the world. This global Bitcoin speculative attack movement is accelerating. And man, 4,800%. That's a 48x in 12 months. That's absolutely crazy. Today, joining us on the show, we have Nick Neuman. Nick Neuman is the CEO of Casa, and of course, my boy Opti, my legendary co-host in the co-host seat. Opti, I mean, this is absolutely crazy. Before we continue the conversation, let's hear some of what we're talking about. Let's check out the Yahoo Finance article. Bitcoin hoarders stock soars 4,800% in Japan on crypto rally. And of course, what company am I talking about? Shout out to our boy Dylan LeClaire. It is Metaplanet, absolutely slaying. The ripple effects of US President Donald Trump's pro-crypto agenda are fueling a surge in Bitcoin demand in Japan, where hodlers pivot to stockpiling the cryptocurrency is delivering eye-watering returns for shareholders. I mean, you never see this. This is unheard of. And it's crazy because I think when Michael Saylor started his Bitcoin accumulation strategy, the total market cap of MicroStrategy was sitting at 1 billion. And currently, when it reached its all-time high, it was at 100 billion. It's like 100x the market cap. Seems like every company that's adopting Bitcoin is starting to feel the benefits of it. Anyways, the article continues to say shares of Metaplanet Inc. are up around 4,800% over the past 12 months, the largest gain among all Japanese equities in that period. I mean, that sounds very familiar, right? What was one of the best performing stocks of 2024? It was MicroStrategy, and one of the highest globally, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. Bitcoin itself hit a record of $109,241 on January 20th as Trump was sworn in for his second term, although it's since erased some of these gains as his trade policies fanned global instability. Metaplanet is one of a number of outfits around the world that aim to emulate the success of Michael Saylor's strategy, formerly known as MicroStrategy. The Tyson Corners, Virginia-based company has morphed into a leveraged Bitcoin proxy and a behemoth after accumulating more than 45 billion of the token. Metaplanet's CEO, Goldman Sachs equity derivatives trader Simon Gertrowicz, said he was drawn to the idea after hearing about Saylor's strategy on a podcast. He'd been running Metaplanet, formerly Red Planet Japan Inc., as a hotel developer since 2013, but shifted to a, quote, Bitcoin-first strategy in early 2024, after a pandemic slowdown forced the company to shutter all but one of its hotels. Since then, Metaplanet shareholders have increased to almost 50,000, growing by 500% in 2024, according to the company. Shareholders include Capital Group, which also invests in strategy, but the vast majority are retail investors, many of whom have limited experience with volatile crypto assets. Quote, Metaplanet has such high exposure to the volatile retail base. It goes on to say, quote, they need to make sure shareholders understand exactly what their strategy is. I think, just my personal opinion here, I think they know exactly what they're getting into. And I mean, this is absolutely crazy for a company you can make a very strong argument for was essentially a zombie company. Essentially, the pandemic was really, really rough to this company. They pivoted, they followed the MicroStrategy playbook. And just like MicroStrategy, Metaplanet really isn't a hotel company anymore. It's like a Bitcoin holding company. And it seems like they have first mover advantage in Japan. And anyone who bought the share is up 4,800% if you bought it at the bottom. Absolutely crazy. Here's another article by CoinDesk. Metaplanet follows MSTR's lead, announces a $11.3 million debt sale for additional Bitcoin purchases. So it seems like this infinite money glitch phenomenon is happening worldwide. People are looking at what Michael Saylor is doing with strategy. They're copying Michael Saylor's strategy. and it seems like their stocks are benefiting from it. And it's not only in Japan. Saylor actually tweeted this morning. Jet King is India's first publicly traded company to adopt the Bitcoin standard. He mentions the CFO, explains why in the interview below. And it's about a 42-minute podcast or interview where the CEO of Jet King explains why they're adopting a Bitcoin strategy. I would not be surprised whatsoever if their stock started going parabolic as well. And it seems like all these companies, like, they're forgetting their core businesses and they're just becoming Bitcoin holding companies. But I think the question that is on everyone's mind is how long until companies like Google, companies like Amazon, companies like Facebook, or better said, Meta, take a look at these crazy performances by these companies like Strategy and Meta Planet, and they say, you know what? It's probably a good idea to get some just in case this thing catches on. I think they can only resist for so long until their shareholders revolt, in my personal opinion. I mean, we already had news coming out of Amazon, coming out of Meta, that specific shareholders were basically saying, hey, you guys should take a look at this Bitcoin thing. And of course, we had the famous video from Michael Saylor where he had 3 minutes to make a presentation to Microsoft, basically making the case as to why they should adopt Bitcoin. And the TLDR of that video is, Microsoft, you should adopt Bitcoin or you're going to have fun staying poor, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. But it was a masterclass by Saylor because what he was able to condense in 3 minutes, he just packs so much information there. Anyways, I'm going to pass it on to Nick. Nick, I mean, you're the CEO of a Bitcoin company, man. So we are here at Simply. So I think the benefits of having Bitcoin on your treasury. It is a literal cheat code that I think most of the world hasn't awakened to yet. But it seems like the public markets are starting to get a taste of it, and it seems like their stocks are performing because of it. Nick?
Yeah, totally. I mean, and it's kind of funny. I didn't realize that MetaPlanet was a hotel company before. It's like they pivoted from being a hotel company to being Hotel California for Bitcoin. They want Bitcoin to come in and never leave. So I think that it's interesting to see these different types of companies. I think Jet King is a education company. MetaPlanet, the hotel company, MicroStrategies, they've got all the business analytics, and so it's these different types of core businesses, but for one reason or another, they maybe were stalled out on the business growth, and so they decided to pivot to take advantage of the growing Bitcoin standard, right? And that is something that gives you more treasury access and more treasury strength to then go build the rest of your business in a way that you have a core advantage because you're using this better money asset on your balance sheet. And we've seen that for our business. We hold a ton of our balance sheet at Casa in Bitcoin, and that's been a huge benefit to us over the years. And so all that comes, we don't have access to the public markets, right? So we're not going out and doing the financial engineering that Saylor's doing, but we accept customer payments in Bitcoin, right? And so we just don't sell the Bitcoin that we get from customer payments. And over the last 5 years, that's built up into a pretty big stash of Bitcoin that has been really beneficial for us from a treasury perspective. So I think it's a huge benefit to companies, whether they're a Bitcoin startup or a large public company transitioning into Bitcoin. Huge benefits from having Bitcoin on your balance sheet.
Absolutely, and especially too, like Nick, I wouldn't consider you guys a startup at this point, but if you're a startup and if you're just getting going, like it's crazy having 20, 30, 40, 50% of your treasury in Bitcoin, and your runway gets bigger. That is a very surreal type of. You're looking at that, you're like, no way, this is real. This can't be real. This is fake.
Because so many startups are used to burning the runway, right? And you're managing that going down. And with Bitcoin, it can expand and it can act if you do it right. You ideally didn't want to buy all your startups Bitcoin at 69K before it crashed down to 20, right? But if you are doing it right, then it can provide significant runway expansion to the point where it's like you did another fundraise as a startup.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an absolute cheat code. And I think the public markets are starting to get a taste of it. But it's interesting which companies are doing this, right? Like Michael Saylor has said himself in previous interviews, like I would have retired. I don't think MicroStrategy would have been competitive. Like this thing wouldn't have existed. And it's very similar when you hear about this meta plan. It's like no one really knew what this company was. It was a hotel chain. The hotel chain was about to go out of business. Then they look at Bitcoin. They're like, hey, you know what? Like this is a good opportunity. It's fascinating to see what Bitcoin has done to these companies that, you know, potentially you can make an argument wouldn't have existed two,
Right.
3 years from now if they remained on a fiat standard. Not only has Bitcoin given them new life, they've made them the best performing stocks of the year. And
Yeah.
these companies don't really like it. Look, I love Saylor. I like strategy. I still don't really know what strategy does. Right. I know that he buys a lot of Bitcoin with strategy, and I know there is a software behind it. I know that, but I don't think a lot of people know what his core business is. And his core business makes revenue, makes money. It's real. It's not that it's, you know, it's fake or anything. But people don't really kind of buy MicroStrategy because of the core business. People buy MicroStrategy because of the Bitcoin that
Well,
he's
yeah,
doing.
especially now that he's doing the more financial, like really leaning into financial engineering, right? So when he first started, he was buying Bitcoin mostly with his business's profits, right? And so that he had smaller buys on a regular basis. But then he figured out the cheat code where he figured out he could go to market with either the at the market sales of his stock or putting out converts and just buy huge amounts of Bitcoin, and the market just keeps eating it up. And so he's really, it doesn't even matter what MicroStrategy's core or strategies core business is. Like now he's just a Bitcoin treasury company, basically.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think companies worldwide are figuring that out too. Opti, what's your take on this, bro? How was your weekend, dude?
My weekend was great. Thank you for asking. Well, first of all, I want to comment on the Yahoo. Well, really, it's a Bloomberg article that was reposted on Yahoo. But I really like the framing that they have there. What was it? Bitcoin Hoarder stock goes absolutely nuclear. Like just as Bitcoin Hoarder stock, that I think that sums up perfectly kind of the mainstream perspective on Bitcoin. You know, we call it hodling. You know, however framing you want to call it, but they're calling us hoarders, and it really has a negative connotation. Obviously, they'll probably be talking about the same FUD lines we get all the time. You know, what do they always say about Bitcoin? Like, there's no yields, there's no cash flows to it, there's no intrinsic values. Why would you be holding this? And they're kind of making us seem like we're just like, you know, collecting some Chuck E. Cheese token over here. Even how they framed it in the article, but you know, millions of this token, and it's really interesting to see them kind of wrap their heads around it. I would say it's most likely because they want to frame this in a negative direction, but I absolutely love this title. Bitcoin Hoarder stock soars 4,800%. Like the cognitive dissonance that I'm seeing in this title is absolutely, it's incredible here, because you can tell they either know their audience doesn't understand Bitcoin and they don't really understand the strategy, but they're also kind of downplaying the fact that Bitcoin's, you know, going nuclear and making companies become even more profitable. But like Nick was saying, I think the interesting part about this is this idea that so many of these companies on actually global corporations right now, a lot of them are essentially like zombie companies. And you, Nico, you were bringing up the idea of Saylor even said it himself. He's like, I was going to retire. MicroStrategy or now strategy, it wasn't really doing anything. I was on my last nerve here, wondering what I should do, scratching my head, and then I found Bitcoin. And I think this is also just a perfect summary of what it means to become a Bitcoiner. You learn about Bitcoin, you kind of come in and it's a speculative thing, you kind of get interested about it, and then once it finally clicks, you change everything about your company, everything about your life, and you're like, oh my goodness, this Bitcoin thing is absolutely the best thing ever. I need to get as much of it as possible. So it is very interesting to see these, you could argue maybe smaller corporations that are a little more nimble, that do have founders that have control of their company, being able to pivot and just be like, look, Yes, I was a hotel business. Yes, I was a business analytics company, but now I am turning my company into basically a Bitcoin bank. Like, I just acquired Bitcoin and it's going to make my stock go absolutely insane, and my shareholders are going to be super happy about it. So I find it very interesting. One, of course, the Yahoo title, well, rather Bloomberg title here. And this idea that once you start to understand Bitcoin, you kind of have to reevaluate everything about your core business. And if you're capable of, obviously, just turn it into a Bitcoin business. But it's also kind of a testament to what a lot of Bitcoiners in our chat always talk about. It's like, look, I just, I mine fiat and I save it in Bitcoin, and my life gets that much better. If we all were corporations, like Sailor, like the Metaplanet CEOs, you just fundamentally change your whole core business to acquire as much Bitcoin as possible, and your shareholder value is going to go crazy. So, hey, will we see will we see Tim Cook do the same thing, not making any more iPhones, and he's just going to stack as much Bitcoin?
All companies worldwide, they just stop producing products. We're just going to pivot to buying Bitcoin.
Yeah,
wow.
I wouldn't want to see that. I like Apple products, but it's kind of interesting.
I think it's interesting. Like, is that sustainable, right? Is it sustainable for more companies to just become these Bitcoin acquisition vehicles? And I think probably no. I think that realistically, you'll get 1 to 2 Bitcoin acquisition vehicles per public market region that really gains the mind share. So it's kind of a jurisdictional or like geographical play, right? Like, Strategy's done this in the US, and then Semler Scientific is maybe like the next biggest one in the US, but it's a huge gap between the two. And then Metaplanet's gone and done this in Japan. Jet King's doing this in India. And I think that once you've got that vehicle, once the public market investors have that vehicle, that's the one where most of the money is going to flow towards. And then it's unlikely that you'll just see a bunch of other public companies purely pivot to this Bitcoin treasury company strategy, because I don't think the market dynamics will work in the same way. And so then the rest of the companies, what they're going to be doing is they're actually going to be using Bitcoin more strategically to accomplish the goal of their underlying business. And so then it's like, how can I use Bitcoin as a treasury asset to keep building the product that I want to build, but do it in a more advantageous way? And I think that's where the real widespread adoption of Bitcoin as a treasury asset will come from, is those types of companies, less so everybody trying to copy Sailor, because eventually that runs out after you tap all the different geographies.
And I 100% agree, because if you do like a little bit of math, right, like the amount of cash that Apple or Google is sitting on and the amount of purchasing power they're losing on a yearly basis is a ridiculous amount. That money could be, allocated to R&D or marketing or like all these things. Like it's like a melting ice cube. I mean, Saylor has said it himself, right? And with that additional capital, think about it. It's not only additional capital. That capital is actually increasing in purchasing power every single year. It obviously allows you to, I think, as we felt as Bitcoin, company entrepreneurs and stuff, it allows you to invest some of that capital back into your company to make your company better, rather than the existing fiat system where it's terrible. It's like an additional tax to the taxes that you're already paying, right? So yeah, I think that this phenomenon, I think what's happening with Strategy and Metaplanet, I think it's essentially taking advantage of the system. And that's why the stocks have exploded as much as they have. But like you said, Nick, I don't think the long term. I don't think the party is going to continue forever. I think they're obviously fulfilling a market need. There's a lot of companies that can't legally get exposure to Bitcoin ETFs or spot Bitcoin, so they obviously buy Strategy instead. And I think a very similar phenomenon is happening in Japan as well. So anyways, guys, before we start the show, we have tons to talk about today. Specifically, there are some interesting things that were happening in Coinbase. The amount of money that has been lost to social engineering scam, it's an absurd amount. Over $300 million Zach XBT wrote a great thread about it. And our friends over at Casa were talking about it as well. And then during the news segment, I find this very interesting. We're going to be talking about where Bitcoin belongs in your retirement plan. And again, just as we've been talking about how Bitcoin is a cheat code, if you put it on your treasury, that applies to your personal finances as well. Like Bitcoin is a cheat code. It's pretty crazy. So we have all that content left for you guys. We have a hell of a show. But before we jump into it, I do want to give a very special shout out to Simply Bitcoin's lead sponsor, BitcoinWell.com. BitcoinWell.com is the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. It's a publicly traded company coming out of Canada that recently expanded to all 50 US states. Enable your independence with the fastest and safest way to buy Bitcoin on-chain or via the Lightning Network in Canada and the USA. What makes Bitcoin Well different is that it's a completely non-custodial platform, which means as soon as you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well and the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. For higher net worth individuals, if you're looking to buy $50,000 worth of Bitcoin or more, check out Bitcoin Well Infinite. It's a white glove OTC desk. So if you're tired of dealing with support emails, if you want an actual human being of which you can call or text every time you want to buy or sell Bitcoin, check out bitcoinwell.com/OTC. Also, if you're an American, you can now get paid in Bitcoin sent directly to your personal Bitcoin wallet. Share your Bitcoin Well direct deposit details with your employer, set your Bitcoin/dollar split, and receive sats instead of fiat with every paycheck. What are you waiting for? Check out bitcoinwell.com today, and you can use promo code SimplyBTC to get 3 tosses into the wishing well, absolutely free. All right, everybody, let's get to the numbers. I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stampseed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed words really secure? Stampseed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of writing them down on paper. Don't do that. Paper sucks. You want to literally stamp your seed into this plate of titanium. Your words are actually stamped into the metal plate with this hammer. So once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and your pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and most importantly, because this is generational wealth, time-proof. All things that paper is not, allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin for the long haul. I mean, here is the plate that they crushed. They put in water, they put a blowtorch to it, and as you can see, the words have survived. Stamp your seed on Stampseed. And you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on their store. All right, everybody, scan the QR code on your screen to take you directly to the stampseed.com website. Use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off. I also want to give a shout out to the 1,700 of you guys watching live between YouTube and X, and the 100 or so of you guys watching live on Rumble. If you guys are enjoying the show so far, smash the like button. On YouTube, we just broke 100 likes. Help us break 150 likes within the first 30 minutes of the show. So there's almost 500 of you guys watching live on YouTube alone. Smash that like button. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is 97,280. Block height 883,197. Sats per dollar 1,028. Market cap 1.93 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap 9.5%. Percentage issued 94.39%. Decline from all-time high negative 10.9%. Realized monetary inflation 1.01%. In the grand scheme of things, we are just getting started. Anyways, Nick pointed this out to us in the beginning of the show. We were originally going to cover something different, but then Nick pointed this out to us. I'm like, we have to cover this because this is absolutely crazy. And remember, guys, we are huge advocates of self-custody. The entire show is essentially telling you to take self-custody. The partners who we choose to partner with enable you to take self-custody of your Bitcoin. And again, one of the easiest and fastest way to get your essentially your Bitcoin rugged is by leaving it on an exchange. And the exchange doesn't even need to be hacked, right? You could just be social engineered, or your email address is hacked, and then hackers get access to your exchange, and then they just take out all your Bitcoin. This is why cold storage is so important. But it's not just cold storage. You got to take cold storage properly, and there's many different ways to do that. And we're going to talk a lot about that during the culture segment today. But anyways, let's get into the thread by Zach XBT. Over the past few months, I imagine you have seen many Coinbase users complain on X about their accounts suddenly being restricted. This is the result of an aggressive risk models and Coinbase's failure to stop its users from losing 300 million per year to social engineering scam. That is absurd. That is a crazy. That's a lot of money. Anyways, myself and another person by the name of Tangkui42 spent time reviewing Coinbase withdrawals and gathering data from my DMs for high confidence thefts on various chains. Below is a table we created which shows 65 million stolen from Coinbase users in December 2024 through January 2025. Our number is likely much lower than the actual amount stolen, as our data was limited to my DMs and thefts we've discovered on-chain, which does not account for Coinbase support tickets and police reports we do not have access to. It goes on to say, let's walk through how these Coinbase social engineering scams work. A victim reached out to me last month after losing 850,000. That's, oh my God. Graphing out this theft led to a consolidation address with 25 other victims tied to Coinbase HODL.eth. Goes on to say, the scammer called the victim from a spoofed phone number and used personal information obtained from private DBS to gain their trust. After they told the victim their account had multiple unauthorized login attempts, they then sent a spoofed email which appeared to be from Coinbase with a fake case ID, further gaining trust. They instructed the victim to transfer funds to a Coinbase wallet and whitelist an address while support verified their account security. Scammers clone the Coinbase site nearly one-to-one, allow the scammers to send different prompts to the target via spoofed emails using panels. There are many Telegram channels where scammers advertise them. See examples of various panels used by scammers below. Last year, I posted multiple examples of Coinbase user thefts, all for millions of dollars. The two main groups conducting these scams are skids from the COM and the threat actors located in India, both primarily targeting US customers. The other month, a Coinbase employee told people on X to stop using VPNs to avoid being flagged as suspicious. Meanwhile, threat actors will explicitly block VPNs from phishing sites and not use them. This shows Coinbase's failure to diagnose the actual problem, and it continues. Now, I know, Nick, you guys reacted to this you reacted to this personally, and I know Lop reacted to this. This is one of your posts, and you made a video about it as well. Today, Zach XBT shared research showing that at least 65 million in crypto has been stolen in Coinbase social engineering scams in just the last 2 months. The main point in your security is you. What do you mean by that, and what can people do to protect themselves from these types of attacks, Nick?
Yeah, so first of all, this was crazy to me that so much money had been stolen from people on Coinbase and that they still haven't really done something about it. And so this is like Coinbase has a very trusted position in our industry just due to the number of people that use it. And so that makes them a huge honeypot, and this is a huge problem for them if they're losing $300 million plus per year, right? And that's just an estimate of probably on the lower end of the range. So Coinbase needs to be doing a better job about this. But self-custody is one of the best ways you can protect yourself against this, and we'll go into that. But when I say that in my tweet that the main weak point in your security is you, what I mean is that a lot of times these people are giving access to their Coinbase account to the social engineers, right? And so they've got somebody calling them who who has some information on them that the victim thinks, oh, it would have to be Coinbase if they know this about me. That's not true. Like your addresses, your phone numbers, your email, all that stuff is out there for people to find. And from one of the many hacks, right? Like AT&T has been hacked how many times? I don't know. So all of that stuff is out there. So somebody calls you and they say, hey, I'm with Coinbase. There's a problem with your account. Let me give you some information that I've stolen from somewhere else on the web. And this is going to trick you into thinking that I'm from Coinbase and here to help you. And they really rely on scaring you. Like they get you into this state of anxiety and fear. Oh, is there actually something wrong with the funds in my Coinbase account when there isn't anything wrong with it? And then they walk you through this whole script where they eventually trick you into basically sending them the Bitcoin. It's not even, oftentimes they aren't even like taking over your account. Sometimes they figure out how to take over your account directly. But a lot of times they are actively tricking you into just sending your Bitcoin to them. And so this is where I get to like the main weak point is your security is you, right? If you let yourself get into this state where you're worried about losing money, you give up all of your logical kind of processing power, and suddenly they have full control over you. And so the best thing you can do in these scenarios is one, don't answer the phone to unknown numbers to start with. But two, if you think that there might be something fishy here, or Coinbase is calling you, or whoever it is, Casa is calling you, whoever it is, like just take a step back and say, whoa, hang on a second. Is this real? Maybe I should take a breather here and let your logical mind come back a little bit.
Yeah, and I think they also prey a lot on people that perhaps are a little bit older and they're used to getting those types of calls from their banks, right? And they sound super legit. And it was actually really interesting, Nick. I was going to say funny, but interesting is the better word. You actually answered one of these calls yourself and you recorded it, which I thought was hilarious is a terrible word because it's all this money is being stolen. But I think it was interesting that, one of the leading, Bitcoin security company CEOs picks up one of these scam calls. What was one of the things that you experienced or that you noted from the scammer?
I mean, I highly recommend people go and watch that because it gives you so much insider info as to how they pull off these scams and how they trick people, right? It's on my Twitter profile and it's the pinned tweet and it's a 14-minute video and it's entertaining in kind of a sick way, honestly, but it's also very educational. So you know what to look out for. One of the things that I took away from it though is they are looking for very easy targets. The name of the game for them is cold call hundreds of people a day, find the easiest possible target for them to hook fast and then move on to the next one. And so it's all a volume game. So if you are just slightly more difficult than the next person, they will hang up and move on, right? And so if you just take that breather, you can get them to move on and not mess with you in that instance. And so that's one of the many things that I think I took away from it. But I've attempted this a couple of times, right, to record these guys when they call me. And the first time I was following along with them as they were sending me the spoofed email from Coinbase, the text confirming that, they were a Coinbase representative. And I saved all this stuff. And we're going to publish a second video soon that is, well, that first one was more about like this guy kind of bragging about how they do all this stuff. The second one is actually me going through the steps to get social engineered and then stopping at the point where I thought, oh, this is where they could actually steal anything that's in my account, right? And then calling him out and trying to get him to talk about it. And that's when he hung up. But up to that point, I've got all the things like they sent me this email, they sent me this text message, here's what the guy's saying. And so we'll have more of that stuff coming to help people just educate themselves because that's what you got to do, right? You got to educate yourself to know how to protect yourself. And like you said, this isn't just a problem for Bitcoin, right? Like this happens with older people with their normal bank accounts all the time. I was talking to a friend of mine who works at a bank, and he said that they have problems with this where, some elderly person will get social engineered with their bank account, and then they've got maybe a day to try and reverse that payment, or it's just gone. So it's a big problem. And honestly, this is one of the things that the right type of self-custody helps to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, self-custody comes with a lot of responsibility. And I think that there is like there is a mental shift that people, I think, are going to have to go through, over the next decade or so, as because it's not just self-custody of your money. It's your identity also. It's your digital identity. And I think, as we transition from the analog era to the information era, it becomes even more important. Like people don't really understand the significant, because it comes with the pros are freedom. The pros are autonomy. The pros are sovereignty. The cons is there is no 1-800 number to call if you get hacked. There is no 1-800 number to call if your seed phrase gets exposed for whatever reason. There is no 1-800, and then not. And I want to save this conversation for the culture segment. But if, like, for whatever reason, people know that you're taking self-custody of your Bitcoin, how do you protect yourself from $5 wrench attacks? Right? How do you take advantage of playing of keeping your seeds in different locations, potentially different jurisdictions, right? To kind of play into your security setup. And these are very important questions that people are not asking because they've been conditioned to outsource that responsibility to a financial institution. But now that we're heading into the era of self-custody, of people reclaiming back their financial sovereignty using Bitcoin, you got to look into multi-sig. You got to look into how to take, the different hardware wallets that exist. You got to look into the different solutions like Casa. We're going to talk about that during the culture segment. You got to do that. If you want to become a sovereign individual, you got to put in the work to become a sovereign individual, and you got to put in the research. So I think I'm really looking forward to that second video, Nick, that you guys are going to come out with.
Yeah.
I know June Seth has done a great job.
Yeah, he's done some good ones.
Exposing some of these scammers as well. Opti, do you want to chime in before we move on to the news segment?
Yeah, well, I was just going to really comment. I didn't watch Nick's video, but now I'm going to, because the June Seth series was like incredible to listen and kind of get into the mind frame and the amount of bragging that you heard on those. And, they were just very cold-blooded, to say, like, put it lightly. And there is like a lot to learn from this. Obviously, maybe you think that you are a super Bitcoiner here and that this could never happen to you, but they even get people that have been doing it for a while. And so it is very interesting to just hear how the social engineering happens, obviously protecting yourself, but also kind of knowing how to protect your friends and your family. And I'm glad that Nick said, the one thing that I know I do is I just literally don't pick up random phone numbers. I don't respond to random emails. It's like, if it's there, and even personally, like knowing that I have a good self-custody setup, you even start to feel like if you see those emails, you're like, oh, wait, mate, did I leave something on there? Am I actually being at risk here? So even someone that does it correctly, you still feel that. And then imagine if you don't really understand what you're doing. So it's very easily to be socially engineered here, but it's always very eye-opening to see these or hear these recordings and see how they do it. And it's just incredible how much money people lose. And that's why we constantly try to tell you guys to take things slow, take things into self-custody, and really prepare yourself. So I'm super glad we brought this up. But that thread by Zach XBT is crazy. 300 million plus, like,
that's crazy. 300 million
nuts.
a year, bro. A year, which is
minimum.
Absolutely gnarly. And 65 million the last 2 months alone. Anyways, guys, we're going to hit the news segment. We're going to talk about Bitcoin, your retirement, how you should custody that Bitcoin. We'll be right back. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Casa. Bitcoin security matters, but managing private keys can sometimes be complicated, especially multi-sig. What if you can secure your Bitcoin without worrying about losing a seed phrase or giving up custody? With Casa, you can completely control your Bitcoin with multi-key security, so even if one key is lost or stolen, your funds stay safe. No single point of failure, no stress. That's what I absolutely love about these guys. They make taking Bitcoin into self-custody incredibly easy with their best in industry user experience through their app. I've been personally recommending Casa for years now to my friends and family because they will get all the benefits of multi-key self-custody security without the hassle of having to learn complicated UI. And if you're thinking of one day passing on your Bitcoin to the next generation, their inheritance plan has you covered. Also, if you're a business looking to add Bitcoin to your treasury, do it the secure way with Casa for Business. To get started, go to casa.io today and get 5% off Casa Standard or Casa Premium with promo code SIMPLY. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US, and it integrates seamlessly with their free app called Envoy. Passport is fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a classic feature phone, so you'll know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. It's also air-gapped, meaning Bitcoin stays offline, never touching an internet connection. It's Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, air-gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes with Passport at foundation.xyz/simply. Get peace of mind for your piece of Bitcoin. All right, guys, and FYI, yes, Casa is a partner, and your Passport is compatible with Casa. Because I know I'm going to get that question. So yeah, definitely check it out. I think the topic of today's news segment is why Bitcoin belongs in your retirement plan. There's a clip from Legacy Media, and then I'm going to take a look or share the website Priced in Bitcoin 21. And of course, Jimbo's calculator, when moon, given my Bitcoin stack, when can I retire? Anyways, let's check out the clip.
35% of Americans felt like they were
significantly
significantly
behind
when it comes to saving for retirement.
Let's try that one more time.
35% of Americans felt like they were significantly behind when it comes to saving for retirement. That's according to Bankrate's retirement survey. Now, one asset that you may not have considered adding to your retirement portfolio, cryptocurrency. Joining me now in studio with more, we've got Chris Klein, who is the COO and co-founder of Bitcoin IRA. Chris, great to have you here in studio with us. Now, you say that there are three things that typically draw investors to crypto. So let's start with asymmetry. Why is that appealing?
So just getting yourself as a potential hedge against other problems in the marketplace. Also just getting off of zero and having an opportunity. This is a big shift in monetary policy that's happening. And for the first time in about 100 years from the White House, we're getting executive orders that are saying, hey, this is time for national sovereignty and for individuals like yourself, individual sovereignty with your portfolio.
You're also looking at this as an inflation hedge. That's part of the top three things that you're looking for and reasons why investors tend to turn to Bitcoin for retirement saving. Just break that down for us in the inflation hedge that Bitcoin could be for retirement savings.
So it comes down to scarcity. There's only 21 million Bitcoin that'll ever exist. 19.5 million of them are accounted for. We haven't seen this kind of scarcity since the 1920s, 1930s. So to get, there'll be a day where they'll say, wow, you're a one Bitcoiner, and it'll be a life-changing experience for those folks.
Interesting. And so, and lastly, within that, volatility and hedging against volatility. I mean, Bitcoin and crypto more broadly initially and continue to be known as a more volatile asset. So how does having and engaging that volatility, how does that work within a retirement strategy?
Well, you're more of a long-term thinker, or as we call long-term hodlers in the crypto space. So when you're in your retirement setting, you're thinking 3, 5, maybe even 7 to 10 years out. But volatility is a reality walking in, and especially this year, we're going to have price discovery. Tom Lee and others are calling for maybe $250,000 for a Bitcoin. We're sitting just around 102.
So It's very interesting the way that the anchor phrase the anchor kind of phrased it in terms of volatility. Like volatility is a bad thing, volatility is dangerous, volatility is negative. But if you take a look at the data, this is why I love this website, priced in Bitcoin 21. Everything, the S&P 500, even with housing prices doubling in the United States, gold, oil, everything is down against Bitcoin. Especially the longer term view you look at it, like it's pretty crazy. Like even the S&P is down 77% compared to Bitcoin. Gold 94%. A house 90% cheaper compared to Bitcoin. Oil 94% cheaper. The dollar, I mean, we all know this. It's obvious. And I think that leads me to my next question is, Nick, what is the role of Bitcoin in people's retirement? How should people look at Bitcoin and see Bitcoin potentially as a tool to, live the life they want to live in the future? And then my second question to that is, how should they be storing that Bitcoin, and what type of tools are there for them to potentially pass that on to the next generation in terms of inheritance?
Yeah, so I think the interest in the guy in the video kind of alluded or said this, but the interesting thing about putting Bitcoin in a retirement account is you are necessarily just taking a very long-term view on the assets in your retirement account. And most people just have kind of an auto buy going in their retirement account, right? Especially when you're a little bit younger, you're not planning to retire for maybe 30 years or so. So you're buying indexes, right? That's what people historically have done. You just are always putting your money into Vanguard or whatever the index is. And what's interesting about it is, like a lot of times when you're young, you're starting out, you're taking this long-term view, and so the Vanguard tools will suggest, oh, you should have maybe 90% or more of your portfolio in equities. And that's going to provide kind of the best return over a long period of time, as long as you're willing to weather some of these ups and downs where equity is more volatile. And then as you get older, it starts to suggest, oh, maybe you should have some bonds in here and stuff so you have less volatility. Well, Bitcoin is incredibly volatile as well, or has been historically, and we'll see what happens going forward. But it's been incredibly volatile. But for the people who have held over a long period of time, they've had immense long-term gains, right? And so that mindset matches up very well for retirement accounts. And then you add on the fact that for certain types of retirement accounts, when you actually pull the money out, it can be tax-free. All the gains, capital gains, are tax-free. And so this is a huge benefit for owning Bitcoin in a retirement account. So that's to answer the first question there, like why would you think about owning Bitcoin in a retirement account? And then the second one is, how can you hold Bitcoin in your retirement account? I think the most basic way is if you've got kind of a classic 401k or something like that, right now your main option is the ETF for having Bitcoin in that account. There is also a less known type of account called a self-directed IRA. And with this, you can actually self-custody the Bitcoin that's in your IRA. And so there's certain limits on, whether you can have that type of IRA or not, how much money you can put into it on an ongoing basis. But for people with that type of IRA, they can self-custody their Bitcoin, which is great from a security perspective. And for the people who maybe have a 401k and don't have access to that self-directed IRA, or have a really large balance sitting in a 401k already and they want to move some of it into Bitcoin, generally the ETF is going to be the best vehicle for that, which I think is one of the huge benefits of the ETFs coming to market. Like, whereas overall, I'm a big self-custody advocate, right? That's what we've built our whole company around. The ETF is great for some of these more restricted accounts, like retirement accounts, where you want the long-term tax benefits, but you weren't able to access Bitcoin through that before.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think it kind of it depends on the situation, right? Like if you're an older person, right, the ETF things look very, very appealing to you. You just go log into your Charles Schwab account, bam bing bam boom, you're buying Bitcoin. I think if you're younger, right, the whole self custody thing, I think there's like an ideological component to it as well. I think a lot of us lived through the 2008 financial crisis. We're not exactly fans of the legacy financial system, and I think self custody is our way of protesting. It's a very peaceful protest. It's basically saying like, look, you guys could have fun with that. I'm gonna opt out of the system entirely, and I'm gonna take custody of my keys. Opti, what are your thoughts, brother?
Yeah, well, not to really rehash what Nick was saying, because I think he absolutely hit the nail on the head. My more interesting take on this is the fact this is even being played on the corporate press right now. The fact that we've gotten to the point in 2025 where they're talking about Bitcoin being a form of wealth to retire on just goes to show how far we've kind of come in this whole Bitcoin journey. Because for a long time, anytime they talked about Bitcoin on the television, it was always either a speculative asset or it's for criminals, etc. And now we're getting to the point where they're like, hey, boomers out there, you might have never heard of this Bitcoin thing, and it's the way for you to retire. Or obviously for us younger people, and personally, I don't have an IRA or a 401k. My retirement is Bitcoin, and so I am the living example of this. But it is interesting that they're getting this message out for more people, where they're like, hey, maybe here's one thing that you haven't really considered, and it's holding Bitcoin long term. Like we were saying, 7 to 10 years out, holding Bitcoin, it will be your retirement. I think that is like the big silver lining here, is that we've gotten to this point now where it's actually being taken seriously from the suits and the smart money out there. They're like, hey, maybe this Bitcoin thing is something that you can retire on for the future. And I think that's only going to increase. And probably by the end of this year, obviously by the next cycle, I think it's going to become very common knowledge that, hey, maybe you're going to get outsized gains by just holding Bitcoin versus putting money in a 401k or, just a standard IRA. And maybe you want to go to these Bitcoin Roth IRAs, et cetera. And I think this is just how far we've come in the last couple of years, where Bitcoin is legitimized now, or at least at the very beginning of being legitimized as something that you want to hold long term, that you can live on for the rest of your life, and that will be there for you when things are uncertain, especially when you kind of look at the outsized gains from Bitcoin compared to a standard, 401k or just holding stocks, et cetera, and all the crazy uncertainties in the world right now. I'm super glad we've gotten to this point now where they're at least starting to talk about Bitcoin in the way that we've talked about it. And now it's seemingly becoming that every corporate press out there will eventually become a Bitcoin propaganda machine. So I am super hyped on that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Before we move on, guys, I do want to show you something that's a fan favorite here at Simply Bitcoin, which is Jimbo's Moon calculator. So we'll pull it up and I'll essentially explain to Nick what it is. Essentially, Nick, this is like an open source like code that a buddy of ours wrote. And essentially it's when Moon, given my Bitcoin stack, when can I retire? What is a fan favorite here is people plug in numbers. So I'll pass it on to you. Just hypothetically, of course, what is for the sake of the show, your stack size in BTC, just an example. 0.5, 0.1.
I never reveal this, so I'm going to leave it at the default 1.
I didn't ask you for your actual stock size.
For the audience.
Just for the audience as an example.
I don't know. Let's see what's the new goals here in 2025 for Bitcoin. I've been seeing, what is it, 10 million sats, 0.1, 0.21.
Should we do 0.1? Okay.
Or maybe no, let's do 0.5. Do half a coin.
Half
for
a
someone
coin.
new
Nick,
here,
do you agree? Are we going with half a coin?
That sounds great. Yeah.
Half a coin. All right. Your desired income in today's dollars.
I mean, I'm assuming when I retire, I won't be supporting kids or anything like that, and won't be living like too crazy of a life. So let's say the desired income, necessary income for like me and my wife is probably, let's call it 100K or something.
100K. Boom.
Although with inflation by that point, maybe it's got to be $1 million.
It's in today's dollars.
So
Okay,
it has today's dollars, and then it asks you what the annual USD supply increase. So what the inflation
This
rate.
is the fan favorite part.
Yeah. All right. So what's the annual U.S. inflation?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think it is? That's basically the question that we always kind of pose to the audience. We have what's the official numbers is right
It's
now
3%. 3%.
3%, but we all think it's a little higher.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
said
said
8.
8%. All right. And now I think this is like the biggest factor here. What do you think is going to be the annual Bitcoin appreciation rate, Nick?
Yeah. So I think we've got one more set of like pretty big leg ups from like a big burst in adoption, like at the government level and that kind of thing. And then it's going to become more steady. So I would say I'd put this. How long is this supposed to be? Or it's calculating the number of days. So
It's basically saying like, look, with 0.5 and 100, you want 100,000. The annual inflation rate is 8%.
45.
Okay,
Let's go.
35.
No,
All right.
45.
No, 45.
Oh, 45.
Don't
Oh,
be
I
a
like
bear in
that.
the chat, Nico.
I like that. Okay, so the personal moon date for someone who has 500 million. Is it 50 million sats?
No, wait.
50
He's
million
got a
sats.
buzz.
Yeah.
50 million sats. Your personal moon date would be 2031. That's when you'd be able to start withdrawing from your stack. And this is assuming also that you're not going to add to your stack as well. With the desired annual income of 100K.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to essentially retire at 2031. You'll be able to start withdrawing from that 0.5 Bitcoin. This is why I absolutely love this calculator. It's a huge fan favorite. It's completely open source. You guys could plug in the numbers there.
Are we sure this website isn't run by the IRS?
Well, this is why we say don't plug in your numbers. Hypothetical numbers.
Exactly. This is all hypothetical. This is what the chat is asking for. This is all just for the sake of example and having fun and all that. So yeah, guys, go check out When Moon. It's a fan favorite from Simply.
Nico, will you drop the link in the chat? People are asking for it.
Absolutely. And let's get on to the culture. And we're going to talk about Casa and how you guys could use Casa as a self-custody solution. They make multi-sig incredibly easy. I've been recommending them to friends and family for a very, very long time now. So we're going to talk about all that during the culture segment. We will be right back. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, HIVE Digital Technologies. As the first ever public miner, HIVE's been battle tested through every possible market. And as the first with an AI strategy, HIVE continues to redefine the future of sustainable energy. Also, gotta casually drop this in here, HIVE consistently tops the industry in Bitcoin mined per exahash. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're changing the game. Learn more by following them at HIVE Digital Tech or check out their website, hivedigitaltech.com. I want to give a very special shout out to our sponsor, Compass Mining. They make Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone, from beginners to experienced investors. Their turnkey miners gets you online and hashing within 48 hours, making it easier than ever to start your mining journey. Plus, with their active marketplace, you can resell your miner at any time, adding flexibility and value to your investment. Visit their website to access a wealth of resources, learning everything you need to know about Bitcoin mining. Take your first step into the world of Bitcoin mining with confidence. Discover more at compassmining.io. Again, compassmining.io, and see how Compass Mining can power your success. All right, everybody. So let's talk about Casa. Let's talk about all things Casa. Like I said, huge fan of this company. I've been a huge fan of this company for a very long time Because I am essentially the de facto Uncle Jim for my entire family. And obviously, I want my entire family taking self-custody of their Bitcoin. And I think Casa allows you to do that without all of the, I would say, the UI complexities. I think the UI is I think the UI of a lot of Bitcoin software for, you know, I don't want to specify a specific demographic, but let's just say people that aren't living and breathing Bitcoin. They aren't on Bitcoin Twitter 24/7. They aren't consuming Bitcoin podcasts 24/7. They're just trying to get by, like my parents, like my immediate family, this is the app that I recommend for them, because obviously I want them to have the security of multi-sig, but I also don't want them to essentially get so in over their heads in terms of their setup that they can't access their Bitcoin. Because that's another thing that people forget about Bitcoin and security. It's not how you can make two mistakes. You can make your security so sophisticated that you yourself lose access to your Bitcoin, and then you can make your security so weak that your Bitcoin gets hacked. You want that happy medium, right? And I think that's what you guys do incredibly, incredibly well, Nick, over at Casa, especially with the UI that you guys have, with the app that you guys have. It makes it incredibly easy for someone to set up a multi-sig wallet without them really needing a lot of technical know-how. It's really straightforward. The emails that people get, you connect your ledger with the passport. It's awesome. Now you don't even have to connect it to a computer. You can just use the camera feature and scan the QR code just from the phone. You don't even have to connect it to a computer anymore.
Yep.
You guys do a really, really good job at making multi-sig incredibly easy for the everyday person that wants to benefit from multi-sig security.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the goal, right? When we created Casa, we realized it was just too hard to hold your own keys. People were doing all these crazy things to try and make it safer, and we recognized that there was a huge need to just give people a basic, like balanced, really robust security model where we walk them through end to end. Here's how you do it in a well-designed way, and get as many Bitcoiners as possible secure. And so it's been a ton of fun to build over the last 6 years now. We've been around for quite a long time, and I think really built up a lot of trust in the community for doing a good job securing a lot of Bitcoin. So this is something that, like, if you think about it, the main goal of what we do is just remove single points of failure. So remove the single point of failure of your Coinbase account getting social engineered. Remove the single point of failure of a Trezor or a mobile wallet or something like that that could be wrench attacked. Remove the single point of failure of what happens if your house burns down, which we've actually had happen. And so there's a lot of these different potential things that can happen when you self-custody. And what we do is try to build a system that helps you protect yourself against all these different things without having to put in hours and hours of work yourself to understand and figure out how to do it.
Absolutely. And I kind of want to walk through a lot of this, right? So is it Casa standard plan? And then if you compare that to like a single sig setup, right? It protects you from accidental loss. How? Because Casa actually holds one of the keys in the 2 of 3 setup. So essentially you're responsible for 2 of the 3 keys. If you lose one of those keys, you can always go to Casa and they'll sign that transaction for you. But I think there's a security protocol. I think it's 7 days, I believe, before you guys sign off on that transaction. So again, this is like, and this has happened to me without getting into any specifics, but this has happened to me with family members where I set them up on Casa on one of the 2 plans and they lose a key and they freak out. They're like, I lost the key. And I'm like, no, don't worry. Because through the app that you guys have, it actually makes replacing a key incredibly easy. You don't really have to do anything. You just plug in the new ledger, and it just replaces the key. I don't know, some magic is happening in the back end, but essentially this is, I don't want to say idiot proof, but like you guys are making it really, really difficult for people to lose their Bitcoin the way that the Casa app is set up.
You gotta mess up multiple times, right? And so you have to like stack mistakes on top of each other, which is what we're trying to do, because security is never going to be perfect, right? Like it's always this dance between the threats and the protection against those threats. And so what you're trying to do is just build like layers of security and hope that if one of those layers fails, then you've got this second layer that can still help you, recover funds, that kind of thing. And so I think a good example of this is we actually had a client whose house burned down recently, and he had a key and a seed phrase backup stored in the part of his house that burned down. Luckily, it wasn't the whole house. It was like a segment of it. And normally you'd be freaking out about this, right? Because you've lost the seed phrase, you've lost the hardware wallet, that's all of your money gone. And what actually happened was he just called us and said, hey, lost one of my keys. Can you send me a new one? And we sent him a new one. We replaced the key, and then he's back to full health. And so whether you're using Casa or not, you want to think about ways that you can add these like extra layers of redundancy and security into your overall setup, because that will make you more secure. So like on the social engineering side, for example, whether you're using Casa or not, you want to make sure that for your main Bitcoin stash that you aren't planning to do anything with except for hold for a long period of time, you want to make sure you can't access that immediately, right? So even if somebody were to call you and try to trick you into sending them your Bitcoin, you're like, hey, I got to hang up and go drive to this other place, or maybe fly to this other place in order to get my keys, in order to send you this Bitcoin. That suddenly puts you above the threshold of like too much difficulty. And so then they move on to somebody else. So it's all about adding these layers of security into your setup, whether you're using Casa or not.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And again, like it's all about redundancy, right? And the other plan that you guys offer as well is the premium, which is essentially a 3 of 5. But essentially, it really does feel like a 2 of 3, just because the mobile key, the signing process of it is like pretty seamless in terms of how it feels from a user experience. But essentially, you have three. You have 3 keys, hardware wallet keys that you want to obviously take care of, and you have a mobile key. So one of the keys is on your phone, and it is backed up to iCloud or the Google equivalent. I don't know what that's called. So you can essentially transfer it from one phone to the other. And then, of course, you have the recovery key that Casa holds, and it's a 3 of 5. So you need 3 signatures out of 5 in order for you to spend that Bitcoin. But what's really awesome about this type of setup is you could do this with the 2 of 3 as well with the standard plan, but you can really get very clever in terms of where you're going to put the keys and stuff. And you guys, come up with different names in terms of there's one key in the office, there's one key at home, there's one key in the safe, right? And that allows you essentially to spread out your keys over various locations. Not only does that protect you from a $5 wrench attack, but that also protects you from natural disasters. I mean, what happened in Los Angeles recently with the fires, so bad. And terrible. And actually, we know Bitcoiners that their homes burned down. Like, we know Bitcoiners whose homes have burned down. So having your keys, your seeds in different locations protects you not only from the $5 wrench attack, but also protects you from natural disasters as well. Like, you never know. Like, did you think that was going to happen in a very populated part of Los Angeles? Like, no one knew that was going to happen, right? And again, it also gives you the flexibility of losing one of those keys and not losing access to your Bitcoin, right? So I think that's really important as well. Now, I think the question that I have for you, Nick, is could you talk to us a little bit about, like, Casa's holding one of the keys. what can they do? What could you guys do with one of those keys? I think a lot of people maybe they just don't understand the technicalities of it. And what are you doing to ensure the security of those keys as well? So in case someone does lose two of those 5 keys and they want to have access to your Bitcoin, how can they know for certain that they can rely on you guys?
Yeah. So the first thing to know is that Casa doesn't KYC. Some of the other multi-sig options out there, they KYC you as part of the overall solution, and we don't do that. So you can sign up completely anonymously. Like you can make a alias for your Proton mail address if you want to. You can pay us in Bitcoin, so we don't have any information from credit cards. Like you can be as private or as not private with us as you want. And we're following the law completely by doing this, right? And so we have really built our business in a privacy first way. So you can first no KYC with us. And then second, how do we use that key? Well, one of the interesting things is like, all right, we haven't KYC'd you. So how do we make sure that it's actually you requesting this key? And part of the way we do that is we build in time. So at our standard plan, if you request that key, you're going to answer some security questions. And then it's a 7-day wait before we sign the transaction or approve the transaction with our key, which still is just one of the keys that you need. You're going to have to bring some amount of your keys, right? So at the standard level, it's a 7-day wait. At the premium or above level, it's a 2-day wait. And instead of a security questions, we actually do a video call with you to make sure you're not under duress, everything's okay. And you actually did ask us to use our key to help you move Bitcoin. So this is, we've built all these kind of security procedures around here to keep it private while also keeping it very secure to use that key. And then the second thing you were asking about is just how do people know that we've got that key secured? And while I don't go into like the specifics of how this key is secured, it's backed up in multiple geographies offline, and it's never been on the internet. It's not a hot key. It's a total cold key that requires a person to actually go and use it. And so we've put all these, all the best possible protections around this key to make sure that you can count on Casa, right? That being said, let's say something were to happen to the Casa key. We've designed Casa in a way that you are not actually reliant on Casa being around or being able to sign with our key or anything like that, right? Because it's just one key out of your multisig. You hold the majority of your keys. And so we're removing single points of failure, and that includes Casa ourselves. So that's a bit about the Casa key. And I think it's an important part of people's setup because they know they can count on us, but it's also a really critical part of the inheritance setup. We use that to help people's beneficiaries actually recover Bitcoin in case they pass away. And so that additional like kind of trusted security point with us has been really beneficial for people using Casa.
And let me ask you another question, Nick, that perhaps isn't obvious to the audience. By the way, shout out to the 2,700 of you guys watching live right now, 450 of you guys watching live on YouTube, roughly 100 of you guys watching live on Rumble, and 2,256 of you guys watching live on X. If you guys are enjoying the show so far, smash the like button. Nick, I think second to final question is, what happens if Casa disappears? Can people still access their Bitcoin wallet? Let's say you guys go out of business for whatever reason, or, there's a regulatory, like last year, with Operation Choke Point 2.0, a lot of us were feeling a certain way about running a Bitcoin business in the United States, right? So can people still sovereign recover their Bitcoin wallets?
Yeah, of course. This is one of the best things about using Casa, right? Is sovereign recovery. They're your keys. You're holding the keys. So all you do is we give you a file it's called a wallet descriptor file, but you copy paste this bunch of text. You go over to Sparrow or your multi-sig wallet of choice that you want to do sovereign recovery with, paste it in there, boom. there's your wallet, there's all your Bitcoin, and then you use the keys that you have in order to move the Bitcoin out into a setup that's not Casa related. If something happened to Casa overnight. And so this is one of the most important parts about not relying on Casa as a single point of failure, right? We always want to make sure that you can take your Bitcoin and exit Casa without us being in the middle at all. And so we've built a lot of pieces of the app around this, right? So for example, you've got the mobile key in the Casa app, and you need to have that seed phrase from that mobile key as part of the sovereign recovery setup. But let's say Casa's servers go down overnight. We've actually built an offline mode in the Casa app where you can go in, open up the Casa app. It'll know it can't talk to our servers, but that key is on your phone. And so you can just hit export on that key, get the seed phrase for that key, and then plug that into Sparrow as one of the keys in your multisig. So we've done a lot of work to make sure that this is very recoverable in case something happens to Casa, and that you can still always access your Bitcoin without us being in the mix.
I love that. And I just want to kind of summarize a lot of things that you said, right? No KYC, very important. Completely sovereign recover, meaning you don't have to go through the Casa app in order to access your Bitcoin. And it also functions as a failsafe. Like, God forbid you lose one of your keys. I mean, I've been doing this for 9 years. I've seen everything and Nick, I'm sure you're in the same situation. Anything that you think could happen with custody and just dealing with individuals, like, people lose their seeds all the time because they don't put as much they think it's just a piece of paper, or they think it's just a piece of metal. And then they value this is the most common thing I've noticed. They value the hardware more than the paper. They don't realize the paper, the seed words is your money.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, I still have the hardware, but I forgot the pin. Like, oh my God. And then it's like, do you have the paper? It's like, no. Like, this is where you want redundancies. You want to give space for people to make the mistake. Because if you're on a single sig setup and you make that mistake, it's gone. It's over. And there's horror stories of people basically saying, like, I have one more pin attempt. I don't have the seed words, and I have 1 Bitcoin on there. I have 10 Bitcoin on there. That's like life changing. We just did the when moon calculator 0.5, right? So yeah, it's so many redundancies, and I think it's a really, really useful tool for people that perhaps feel a little bit intimidated by the UI of a lot of these wallets, or perhaps you're just an OG hodler. This is a great redundancy tool to have to add to your self-custody setup on the way in becoming a sovereign individual, man. You got to look at all the tools that Bitcoin has given you. And one of the things also too, Nick, that perhaps people don't understand is you guys built all of this on top of the existing Bitcoin protocol. You guys aren't doing anything like, anything separately. This is all built on top of Bitcoin. And what you guys did is you guys improved the UI dramatically to so that people can access it without perhaps feeling a little bit intimidated.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's worth mentioning, like, you don't just have to forget your PIN for the single sig to go wrong, right? Like, you can, we've seen hardware wallets break more often than you would like. And so that's something that is like, the screen just stops working, and maybe you have your PIN, but you're not able to access the hardware. And then if you don't have the seed phrase, then you've lost all your money. I think it might be worth it to like do a rapid fire. There's been a few questions in the chat, and I could go through and like rapid fire answer those as we wrap up.
Go for it.
Okay. So
just comment and I'll pull them up.
Yeah. So one guy asked, any data breaches on their end? No, we haven't had any data breaches. And to protect yourself against that kind of thing, we recommend, like, if you're worried about that, use a special purpose email that doesn't have your name in it. And then, all that shows up is this kind of random email in any sort of data breach, right? And then the rest of the information we try to get rid of as quickly as possible. So for example, if you are getting an onboarding package from you, we'll send you the onboarding package and then delete your address so that we're not holding people's addresses in our database, which was a big thing that we learned from the Ledger breach a few years ago, right? So somebody mentioned my Casa representative, Brian, is awesome. Can confirm Brian is awesome. Somebody said, hey, why do I need to use Casa if I could do this myself? And I can't find the exact comment here, but the reason there we go. So if I can do sovereign recovery, why do I involve Casa at all? And it's because the sovereign recovery is there for if things go badly at Casa, right? But then we've built all these other things that you can really only get through a service provider like Casa while Casa is doing fine. So yes, you can go set up a Sparrow wallet with the same kind of underlying security of Bitcoin multisig, right? But what Sparrow's not going to give you is an advisory team that helps you whenever you need it, like Brian, who will get on a call with you and actually walk you through how to set this up. It's not going to give you an inheritance feature where you can make sure that your family members can actually still access your Bitcoin in case something ever happens to you. Asking your family members to try and figure out how to use Sparrow is like, they're mind blown, right? And so knowing that they have a really simple way to use it and actually somebody on the Casa end to walk them through everything gives some people a lot of peace of mind. And then
there's two the two latest questions, yeah. Nick. So Nick, do you have any specific signing device upon setup?
So typically, it depends on the plan that you're at, right? But if you're signing up for a standard plan, you can bring any of the major hardware wallets. We support Trezor, Ledger, Cold Card, Passport, and then we also added support for YubiKeys, which are really easy to use, and we're the only place that's doing that right now. And so you can bring kind of any of these major signing devices with you. And then you can also, if you're signing up for a premium or a private client plan, we just send you a box that has all the hardware that you need. And you can talk to our team at the private client level and request that we send you custom ones like, oh, I want to make sure I have a cold card in here kind of thing.
This last question from Craig, are all Casa features available in the UK?
Yes. So we're available globally because we don't KYC and because it's a self-custody wallet. That's one of the benefits of self-custody, right? So if you are using Casa, you can use it from anywhere in the world. There's only really like one thing that's not available globally, which is what we call enhanced verification for inheritance. And this is just where we'll actually have a couple of extra steps to verify that a client actually passed away. But that starts to kind of tiptoe into KYC area anyway, where if you want to take advantage of that, you got to give us some extra info because we have to go and actually make sure like we've checked against a death certificate and all that kind of thing.
We have a really good question here from JH, which is how can we feel confident that seed phrases aren't leaked from a bad actor doing an update on these apps when online?
Yeah, good question. So we have a very robust internal process for actually like pushing updates to the Casa app, right? And so the Casa app doesn't have your seed phrase sitting in it. The seed phrase is actually stored on your phone, encrypted by the secure element. And so that phrase is never getting sent to Casa's servers. But let's say something went wrong and the Casa app was hacked or whatever, and somebody got access to that seed phrase. You still have one, maybe up to 3 keys that you're holding that are separate from the Casa app on hardware that's completely offline that you need in order to move the funds. And so even if the worst case scenario happened and the Casa mobile app was hacked, you don't lose your money because that Casa mobile app is not a single point of failure. So this is when I go back to like, what are those layers of security that we've built in? This is an important one. Not every private key that you are using with Casa should be generated online by Casa, right? And that's where the hardware wallets come in.
Gotcha. Anyways, we are getting to the top of the hour of the show. Do you want to give a shout out? We're 2,855 live members watching. Shout out to all you guys. Shout out to the YouTube audience. Shout out to the Rumble audience. If you guys enjoyed the show, smash the like button. Go check out casa.io/simply today. I do want to thank our guest, Nick Neuman, the CEO of Casa, for joining us.
Thank you,
My
guys.
legendary co-host, Optimus Fields. Guys, we love you all. Smash the like button. Consider subscribing, and we'll see you tomorrow for a brand new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.